Militarily Speaking, episode 55, Bob Woodruff Foundation.
This episode, we talk with Anne-Marie Dougherty, CEO of the Bob Woodruff Foundation.
Welcome to Militarily Speaking, brought to you by Armed Forces Bank. This is Tom McLean and Jody Vickery. I am the Regional Military Executive for Armed Forces Bank, and Jody is the Executive Vice President, Director of Military Consumer Lending. You know, I heard something funny about you today. Not funny about you today, but when you were telling me that story about going under
oh yeah, the bridge in Hampton, Virginia.
Have you heard about this thing? You've got that military vibe, don't you?
The Hampton,
Norfolk, Hampton roads. Right.
Yeah, the bridge that's 3.5 miles long, and it goes in a tunnel under the ocean, and then you pop out the other side.
No,
yeah.
It's kind of scary, wasn't it?
It was very scary.
And you said you'll never do it again.
Well, I said that the last time, and then this weekend I did it again.
And then you'll probably do it again.
Probably not. I'll fly into the other side next time and just avoid the whole situation. But I'll fly into like Maine and drive down so I don't have to do it again.
You purposely looked for an alternate route, but you came up with nothing.
I did, because every other alternate route was also an equally long bridge, just not necessarily under the water.
But if you didn't experience, you wouldn't have been on your bucket list checked.
Didn't have it on my bucket list.
All right, should we get back to...
We should.
Okay.
We should. Thanks for bringing that up again. Sure. Welcome to our show. Sorry for the tangent already. You guys have come to know Tom by now. We are excited to have you listening and learning about our guest, Anne-Marie Dougherty with the Bob Woodruff Foundation. I do want to take a few minutes and tell our audience just a little bit about you, Anne-Marie.
And she knows all this already,
I hope that you know all
this. Because I didn't take it right from what was sent to me.
Yes, you did. It is, don't stress her out. It is pretty impressive. So I would have to make this up about you if somebody were to say this about you, but this is all true.
Thanks, Judy.
As Chief Executive Officer of the Bob Woodruff Foundation, Anne-Marie Dougherty oversees and funds the nation's largest non-governmental network of veteran service providers, which, according to Forbes, help veterans not only navigate the 40,000 plus organizations that provide services to them, but also helps veterans heal from the physical and psychological wounds of war. With A-list celebrities and philanthropic institutions at their side, Bruce Springsteen, this is your bucket list, Tom, Bruce Springsteen, the NFL, Craig Newmark Philanthropies, Mackenzie Scott, Jon Stewart, Leanne Womack, Mickey Guyton, and our country's highest ranking military and national security leaders, they've invested more than $100 million in best-in-class veterans programming across the country. Their product is peace of mind for veterans serving organizations, and for philanthropists looking to invest efficiently and effectively in veteran services. As a military spouse, Anne-Marie's connection to the Bob Woodruff Foundation's mission is personal. She has lived experience as a Marine spouse during wartime combat deployments and through multiple duty station moves. When she tells veterans, their families, and their caregivers that the Bob Woodruff Foundation has got your six, she means it. She regularly speaks to media outlets ranging from ESPN to NPR, Time, CBS, and Fox to raise awareness for veterans' needs. Anne-Marie is active with her 2 young boys in their local community, including through their sports teams and schools. She serves on the board of directors of the UN Women for Peace Association, as an advisory board member for the Game Changers Institute, and as our nation's Swell Council member. Anne-Marie holds a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Communications from Drexel University. All a true story.
That's a lot to absorb.
Welcome, Anne-Marie. It is an honor to have you on our show. Thank you for your service as a military spouse. I know you serve alongside your military husband, and just thank you for being here with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
By the way, you know what I took out of this, right? Because
that she is more impressive than you.
Well, tenfold. But when you did bring up Bruce Springsteen and like Leanne Womack and Mickey Guyton, so you've got firsthand connections with these celebrities, the A-list celebrities. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got relationships with all kinds of musicians and comedians specifically that are interested in supporting our veterans and military families. So Bob Woodruff Foundation, we specialize in putting together these big events that honor our service members and veterans and military families. And then, you give someone like Bruce Springsteen the opportunity to perform for such an incredible audience, he's going to say yes.
So when I asked him to perform, he never said yes.
He ghosted you is what happened. He ghosted. Yeah. So background about Tom, he goes to maybe 1 or 2 concerts a week. He goes to movies every Sunday.
Every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock for the discount.
He goes to the matinee every Saturday so he can get the discount. Might be cheap. So yes, this is a who's who in his bucket list of people.
Yeah,
but
and Anne-Marie, I went to 33 concerts a couple of years ago in 1 year, and then I went to 19 last year. But I really
slowing down.
I shouldn't talk about this. I know I did slow it down.
I know.
Yeah.
You're mosh pit mania.
And they're all country artists, Anne-Marie. So we've got that connection. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we've got a bunch of events coming up this year. So I think maybe we'll have the opportunity to meet in person. You can come as our guest to Vet Fest.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, it would be great.
You just made his entire life by saying that.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed today's episode.
So I'm glad you got all your personal selfish things taken care of, Tom, right up front. Good job. Good job. So I would just want to invite you to tell our organization. I think a lot of people have heard of Bob Woodruff, but tell our audience a little bit about the organization, just sort of at a big picture view. And then we'll dive off into a lot of different areas today.
Sure. Well, I know, you've got a military and veteran military family audience. We know that most veterans and their families transition from the military and do just fine in their lives. The goal of the Bob Woodruff Foundation is to make sure that for those who need help during that transition or were impacted by their service, that they have access to the resources that exist in our country to support them. I think you mentioned at the top, we've invested over $159 million in programs toward that end. And over the past 5 years, something I'm really proud of is that we have built a network of organizations that are providing those services in communities all across the country so that we have reach to 98.6% of all veterans and uniformed service members in the country.
That's outstanding.
I almost think we should take a step back for the audience too. I mean, everybody's probably heard of Bob Woodruff and the story behind Bob Woodruff, but is there, going a little off script here, sorry, but is there something that drew you to the foundation too when this opportunity came up for you?
Yeah, it's been 17 years now. So Bob Woodruff at the time was the newly named ABC news anchor. He's Peter Jennings' successor. It was 6 weeks into the job, the top job at ABC, when he was reporting on the war in Iraq. And he was in a vehicle. The vehicle hit an IED. He was catastrophically wounded. It's pretty incredible that he survived what he went through. And his family really credits the miracle of his survival to the bravery of the soldiers and medics who risked their own lives to save his and then cared for him in the military medical system. So the family, when Bob was in a coma for 36 days after he was wounded, just sort of the bedside prayers were, if Bob makes it through this, we will do whatever we can to help any service member who is going through the same thing as our family, because they were acutely aware that they had, sort of all the extras that a company like ABC can provide. So Bob was getting the very best medical care, but his family was also able to fly down and be at his bedside. And he had family members that could help take care of his kids while he was in the hospital. And he had an employer that, was making sure that he was taken care of. And his family, specifically his wife, Lee, and his brother, Dave, who were really at the bedside with Bob, noticed that not everybody had that same privilege to have all the, to be able to take time off from work and be at the bedside and all of that. So the family just said, if Bob makes it through this, and he went from telling the story to being the story, while we have our 15 minutes of people paying attention to what happened to Bob, we will do whatever we can to spread awareness and raise money to support families who were going through the same thing as the Woodruff family.
It's amazing.
Now, hearing that firsthand from Anne-Marie is pretty cool, because that's, again, anecdotally, I knew the story, I lived the story, I watched it on the news, and then you take a break for X amount of years, you forget about that. But the foundation, it feels like you're just keeping it alive and taking care of people that may not have been as fortunate or have the luxury to be able to afford the types of services or care that you would provide in your foundation and all the efforts. So thank you for sharing that passionately. I did go off script, but
so one time I can say I'm glad that you went off script.
Yes. What's one divided by 55?
55 episodes to get there.
So let's talk about the events, right? The events the foundation organizes, the programs, the services, the things that you fund, and to maybe go into a little bit of details, you talked about some events with some A-listers and maybe some musicians coming up, and I'm sure that those things might be available on the website, but we do want you to throw in your website address periodically throughout this so our listeners go there and see all the great things you're doing. But talk about the sort of those signature events that you have, maybe the recurring events you have and programs you offer, and we'll just go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the opportunity to spread the word. Our website is woodrufffoundation.org. That's 3 F's in a row. I always tell people that it's not a typo. And there is a ton of information there. And certainly I am available to connect with people on Instagram, LinkedIn, to give, more specific information going forward and to, make new friends and build our community. We use events as an opportunity to spread awareness or to raise funds for the programs that we provide. We're a national organization. Like I said, we've built the largest network in the country and U.S. territories. And what we're really trying to do is understand what the gaps are in the built for communities to provide resources to veterans. So there's an incredible network of organizations all over the country that are meeting the needs of veterans. But what we hear from them is that there is still a gap between when a veteran walks in the door and says, I need support with employment or legal services or food or housing, that the ability of those community-based organizations to meet those needs, that there's a gap between those things. So from a national perspective, we're raising dollars so that we can be very targeted and invest in solutions in the communities where they need them. Unfortunately, the issues that we are tackling and spending our most time and resources on right now are mental health for veterans. And we've working on mental health for veterans and also for active duty military families with a special emphasis on military kids. It's tough being a kid. It's tough. Being a military kid has, just unique stressors, and really understanding that and making sure that we have mental health care clinicians that are able to and understand those unique needs for our nation's treasure of our military kids. So mental health care is top of the list. And then I know if you would have asked me this when the foundation was first started, we would be focused on food security.
Food insecurity, yeah, right? That's a big deal.
Huge deal. And it's the fact that it's affecting active duty families, especially the young enlisted families, is something that, we just really felt like we had to do something about.
The topics nowadays, the homelessness issue, which is top of mind, food insecurity. You'll notice when you go back to our podcast episodes that when we interviewed Stronghold Community Food Pantry, mm-hmm. just things, and working with Veterans Community Project, working with those that are serving those top of the list needs or unmet needs. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know when you want to talk about this, Anne-Marie, but maybe you talk a little bit about the study that was done too, when surveying 130 of those veteran organizations and what the findings were, because then you might have to do a pivot, or you might have to do an about face and shift your focus as the needs change. But it seems like some of these have been pressing needs for a few years.
It's fascinating when you really look at the amount of organizations that exist to support veterans and military families with various needs all over the country. And then you think about the exemplary care that the VA provides and DoD is working to provide for service members when they transition out of the military, to understand that there are still gaps, that there is a role for philanthropy, and then for philanthropy to be really specific about what we can reasonably tackle and make a difference. So part of the way that we, all organizations are resource constrained to some extent. So we go out and raise money, and then with that pool of funds, we work to prioritize making grants to organizations that are meeting the needs that are the most acute. So to understand what the most acute needs are, we survey every other year our Got Your Six network, which is over 350 partners all over the country. And what that gives us is a national sample set of what is happening community by community, zip code by zip code for veterans and active duty military families, what their needs are, and then what the ability of that community has to meet those needs and what the gap is. Unfortunately, what we discovered in our most recent study is that 70 to 80% of the organizations that are doing the community-based work do not have what they need to support veterans with food security, housing instability or homelessness, mental health care that I mentioned. And another one that we're taking a deeper dive into is transportation. When you think about the limitations of how transportation plays a part in your ability to get food, go to work, get to your medical appointments, that was an interesting discovery. And for anyone who's interested in taking a deeper dive on some of the findings in that paper, it's available on our website.
And one that caught my eye looking at that survey too was about the emergency financial assistance. There may be, just that stopgap, right? That something that they weren't thinking about. And Jody and I talk about this a lot of time with our military clients and just the military population, that where do they go? And give them the resources, give them the education to say what's prudent, what's fair. There's certainly there's lending choices out there, but they're not always the most fair. So give them the education to make an informed decision and do what's right for them financially.
Yeah, emergency financial assistance is an interesting one. We really got more involved in that during COVID, when, everyone was having to make decisions that were, certainly unexpected. The environment we were making decisions in was unexpected. And veterans were like, all people in that unexpected wage loss, the food insecurity piece really spiked, housing instability, and then the cascade of issues that can happen for an individual or family when they become homeless. We always say in the simplest terms, like, you shouldn't have to decide between putting dinner on the table for your family or paying your rent and keeping a roof over your kids' heads. Right. So when it comes to emergency financial assistance, we actually published a paper on that topic about 2 years ago about what the best practices are for organizations to uphold when administering emergency financial assistance grants, so that you can make sure you are accountable as a 501c3 to your donors, and that you have the right amount of checks and balances for the person or family that you're providing the funds to. That's also available on our website. And I think in its simplest form, when times are tough and you're worried about money and that money that you need to buy food, that's going to affect your mental health. If you can't get to work because you can't afford your car payment, that's going to affect your employment. That's going to affect whether or not you can pay your rent and feed your family. And when you look at how interconnected all of these things are, and then think about what a bridge of a grant or a loan to a family is that is fair and accessible, you could really, really, really make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's the key. It is all interrelated, yeah. And so it's like,
domino too.
How in a community do you find all of the right organizations, because they each focus on a different piece of the pie, right? They each try to solve sometimes a different portion of the problem set. And so how do you make sure you've got resources going to the people that are trying to tackle the homeless issue, the food, and so that you've got a whole solution there in the community. So having somebody like the Bob Woodruff Foundation kind of helping look at it from a holistic community view, I think is helpful to kind of steer that ship a little bit. You mentioned the website a couple of times. I do want to get as many plugs in there as we can for it. BobWoodruffFoundation.org with 3 Fs. We'll say that part too. So in addition to the papers that you've published that are available there, I was hoping you could talk about some of the resources that you've got available on your site, maybe specific to some of the issues that we've talked about, but also things that are related to mental health, risk factors, suicide prevention, topics along those lines, maybe some that we haven't even quite hit on yet.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you asked about suicide prevention. Obviously, an incredibly important topic to work to continue to address. Our Chief Program Officer, Dr. Meg Harrell, who is so insightful, she oversees our grants portfolio. So we have hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations that apply to the Bob Woodruff Foundation for funding from us. And our job is to go through and prioritize the organizations that we're going to be able to make grants to, one, based on the needs that I was just talking about. And those are data-driven decisions. And then 2, based on the ability of the organizations that are meeting those needs, how are they measuring their impact? How effective are they? We were seeing over and over again that grant applicants were citing in their proposals that they were preventing suicide by having a group of veterans work out together, or taking people fly fishing, or doing all of these things that we know through evidence can help one's mental health. However, it is not a measurable clinical intervention for suicide prevention. But we were seeing over and over that the logic of the proposal was sort of missing a piece. And when we looked at it in the aggregate, what Meg, our Chief Program Officer, came up with is the category of suicide protection versus suicide prevention. So suicide prevention is what you think of when you think of medical, clinical intervention for someone who is in crisis. All of us we want our work to be way before our work to be effective, so that someone doesn't get to that point. And that's this idea and concept that has been adopted by the DoD, VA, and others about suicide protection. And that's all of the other things that help you stay on the right side, stay mentally healthy, mentally fit, physically fit. And there is a really insightful paper that we have about suicide protection and suicide prevention on our website. In terms of getting involved with the organization, I always tell people the Bob Woodruff Foundation is open for business. I'm wearing 2 hats. I have the hat of spending a lot of time and energy out in communities all over the country trying to raise awareness and funds for the Bob Woodruff Foundation. And then I swivel in my chair, switch hats, and I have the amazing opportunity to provide grants to organizations that are doing the work. And so I tell people, if for your listeners, if they are in nonprofit leadership for organizations that are supporting veterans in the military community, please check out the website. We make grants biannually. We accept applications all year round. And then there's a couple of other bespoke programs that we have. One is we make grants to provide fertility assistance for combat wounded veterans. And that program has really taken off and helped a lot of families, and we're just writing checks to fertility clinics for people to have access to fertility care that they wouldn't have otherwise had access to and isn't covered by their VA healthcare. So you can find out information about that program, which is called VIVA. And then, Tom, to your point about events, we do events all over the country. So if you're someone who wants to attend one of the events, you're a veteran or military family member, and you want to be our guest, please find more information on our website about Stand Up for Heroes, which is in November in New York City, and then Vet Fest, which is in June in Nashville. And you can be
Nashville?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like there might be some country artists there.
Yeah,
right?
Tom, you're coming. I mean, you're coming. Bring your whole gang. Maybe we'll do the podcast on site. What do you think?
I'm going right now.
Oh my goodness. He's going to go out and buy some really super pointy cowboy boots and everything.
Oh, I can't wait. Like a fringe vest. Yeah. Let's do it.
You said Vet Fest, right?
Yes.
Vet Fest.
Yes. Yeah. What's the date?
June in Nashville.
Yes.
I know, but specifically June
21st in Nashville. And this is our 3rd year doing it. And it's going to be at a venue right on Broadway. We've had the past 2 years have had incredible talent. So I'm not going to spill the beans just yet about the lineup, other than you don't want to miss it. And for this particular event, it is 100% free for military families and active duty troops and veterans. That is the audience. These country artists are showing up to just have a special concert. The city of Nashville has welcomed us with open arms. We have amazing partners on the ground there. And if you're a corporate and you want to help us cover the cost of the event, you can find out more information about that on our website also.
She said it was free for certain people. Did she say free for podcast?
So I'm getting in free.
No?
Is what I heard.
Oh.
I think we're setting up a media center, I think we are. We're going to podcast.
Now he's going to want credentials and a tag.
We can have a podcast episode with a musical guest.
Yes, you could get, with
boots
Marie, and chaps and everything. It'll be amazing.
Jody wants you in costume.
You could look like the cowboy on Toy Story.
Emery, I dressed up as the Tin Man, and it's not a pretty sight.
I have pictures I can send you.
Yeah.
I'll hold you to that.
But it was for a good cause.
Yes. True story.
We sacrifice for good causes. All right. So, but we've kind of danced around this topic, and I feel like we're going to be back to these things, but I'm okay of reinforcing all the great things that the organization's doing. What are some of your top priorities that will have an impact on the veteran and military community? Meaning, probably, we talked about some of the big topics, right? And the big issues, but are there certain initiatives? We don't have to get into the legislative side of the house or the things that can help move some needles or create new opportunities for tackling your priorities. But what are those top priorities for you?
Well, we are focused this year. We're planning to spend at least $13 million in grants in areas that we know are going to make a difference. So I probably once a sentence could mention the importance of mental health care for veterans. Also for caregivers, there's sobering research about the toll that caregiving takes on people, and then remembering the unique needs of our military kids. So that's going to include grants that support programs falling in the category of suicide protection and prevention. And then food insecurity, we're not going to stop until we move from, like, we talk about it at the Bob Woodruff Foundation, full plate, full pantry, full coverage. So we don't want you just getting, covering your meals for the day. We want to make sure you have a nice full pantry. And then for an organization with a national remit like the Bob Woodruff Foundation, we have the opportunity, the data, and the reach to really look at what systemic changes can we make so that no military family or veteran is food insecure. And then housing, I think the housing issue will continue to be an acute one so long as the housing market in our country remains as strained as it is. Affordable housing is an issue in every part of our country. For veterans and military families, there's just some other exacerbating factors like the frequency of needing to move. A lot of military families, and I don't mean to preach to the choir, I know you are in the financial services industry, but the access to savings and emergency funds and all of those things that can really drain your bank account with frequently moving or paying high rents and things like that. And then this is one that some people sort of scratch their heads at when I talk about it being a priority focus for us. But as we continue to have natural disasters affect us on our planet, that can be something that can really turn your world upside down. So when the tornadoes affected the soldiers and military families at Fort Campbell last year, we were able to, within 24 hours, call them and say, we have emergency financial assistance funds available to you. And that is because we are administering a natural disaster recovery and fund at the Bob Woodruff Foundation so that we can be ready. We certainly can't predict when the next natural disaster, what it will be or where it will be, but we do know that we have veterans and military families in all 50 states and U.S. territories. So when that happens, we want to make sure that we're ready to help people when they need it most.
We're going to talk about like a day in the life of, right? And
I know. I think I would be exhausted to be you.
You know, when
Jody, I'm exhausted.
I think if I were you, I'm kind of exhausted anyway, but it's different reasons, right?
No, but just the top line stuff, right? CEO of the organization, the executive producer of Stand Up for Heroes, the co-founder of Veterans in Vitro Initiative.
Yeah.
That's like 3 people that should be doing those things, or 10.
I know.
But yeah,
but she said she has a swivel chair, so she can swivel between the different responsibilities.
She'll change her outfit or she'll change her hat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my daughter this week when going through the airport, she tried to talk me into getting her one of those motorized suitcases so she didn't have to walk.
What did you say? Because that is like that's a real question, right?
I actually said no because it didn't look like it went very fast. I'm like, girl, we can get on the moving sidewalk or I don't think it would speed up our process. We'd probably just get people mad at us.
You probably just have one more thing to charge. Yeah.
Right.
Especially if they see your husband's suitcase, right?
Yeah, my husband has a pink cat suitcase.
So much to unpack there. Get it? Unpack.
There's a lot to unpack. That's good.
Literally, there's a lot to unpack
that's almost like a dad joke coming up for her.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes, he might be just a dad joke and all wrapped up in one person.
You've met your match.
I have actually for 20 plus years now. So what is a day for you like? you're leading this organization, you're doing all of the things that we read in your bio. So kind of sun up to sundown, what's a day in the life of Anne-Marie look like?
Well,
how much time do you have?
Right.
I do try to pack a lot in a day. This role is so dynamic that I'm using air quotes, workday is ever the same for me. I'm always getting into something. I travel all over the country, raising funds, awareness, meeting with our program partners. So I'm on the move a lot. I also have 2 young children, and I try to be as involved in their day-to-day, life as I can be, and just balance all of that. I have an incredible partner, and we really do a lot of dividing and conquering. I was telling someone the other day, I'm like a super morning person. I really try to apply anything important that needs to get done. It's got to get done in the morning. It's just got to get done in the morning.
Like before 8 or before noon?
And what time zone?
Yeah. Anything important, like a decision wise, I definitely suffer from decision fatigue. As the day goes on, things that are easy in the morning feel harder at the end of the day. So I professionally try to do the most important thinking, decision making in the morning. And then any day I can exercise is a good one. And that's also a morning thing. Like, if it doesn't happen in the morning, it's not happening later.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's probably why it's so hard to decide what to make for dinner.
Is why.
Decision fatigue.
Literally why.
That's what I'm gonna label it now, instead of just
you're gonna come in.
My family's dysfunctional.
Come in tomorrow morning at like 8:22, and you're gonna be like,
I'm gonna text my husband tomorrow morning at 5:30 and say, "What's for dinner?"
Yeah, I bet it changes your life.
For now, he'll say, "I don't know. What do you want?" Oh, probably not.
For those that are listening to this episode, what are ways that people can support? We've talked about your website. We've talked about raising money. We talked about the importance of money and what good use that money goes. But are there volunteer at some of the events you talked about, volunteer opportunities that you would recommend to the audience or that they could seek on your website?
Yeah. So if you look on our website, there is our Got Your Six Network directory. And that, if you type in where you live, it will give you the organization that is closest to you, that is one of our partners. And those are the community-based organizations where you could literally go help make food in the food kitchen or help process paperwork for a legal aid clinic, help people make, toiletry kits for a homeless shelter, a transitional housing unit. So I definitely think for people who want to get involved, please don't be a bystander. There are so many ways that you can get involved. And then for you, if you don't have a ton of extra time to go out and do any of the things that I was talking about, but for instance, you are a hiring manager in a company, just making sure that when you are looking through all the resumes, that you think about the veterans and military family members who, especially military spouses, who might not have a resume that looks exactly like every other one that comes across your desk. Do the service of taking a beat. There are tons of tools out there that help with MOS translation and understanding what the different types of jobs are from translating from military service to corporate speak. So if you are on the corporate side, you could just put it as part of your priorities to make sure that you are being inclusive of veterans and military spouses whose resumes may not look like every other candidate.
You're right. We've talked about this on other podcast episodes, but about 80% of our workforce, Anne-Marie, has a military connection, either spouse or dependent, which we're very proud of that number. And we also think about the Military Spouse Employment Partnership that we're a founding member. We talk about hiring our heroes. So whether it's by design or not, it's when we see someone that has that kind of connection to the military, we're probably the first one to raise our hand.
I love it.
Say, let's hire that person. Yeah.
Well, you're setting the example, and then everyone who is successful in your company is probably going to make it a point to look out for the next generation coming up and transitioning out of the military. Yep. And so you've created a company culture that is reflective of your company's values. It's incredible. Well, and I'm thinking we need to get you all involved in VOWS, which is an initiative that we oversee where we try to help companies specifically in financial services industry hire veterans and military spouses. And once they are hired, provide opportunities for them to network and have career development, learn, and all of those things that it sounds like you're doing naturally. So we'd love to welcome you into the Valves fold as well.
Love it.
Should we add a fourth job title to her, brand ambassador for Armed Forces Bank?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I'll take it. Only if I have a hat. Can I have a hat?
Wait, I think you get a cape, actually.
And her old,
Okay. I'm down. I'm down.
but yeah, when we're talking about Got Your Six Network next, you mentioned 350 organizations.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
It's a lot. I don't know how you keep track of all those, but yeah.
Well, we have the directory. We also have an incredible team of.
Yeah, Tom, they wrote them down.
So she was being sarcastic, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I like her.
And empathetic.
Yeah. No, she just knows her audience with you, Tom.
Well, you know what's interesting about the network is the 350 organizations are like connector organizations. The technical term is collaboratives. So they are the organization that you're going to walk in the door of to get services in your community that's connected to everybody else in your town. And what we learned over time is that it depends on where you live, what that organization is. So you can't say, oh, in every town I'm going to go to, well, every town doesn't have the same thing. So what we discovered through true, traversing the country, talking to people, listening to people who are doing the work on the ground, that in New York City, if you want to get connected to services, you go to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Most cities don't have that office under the mayor, but New York City does. So if you contact Commissioner Hendon, you will have access, you will know who to call for housing, food, legal services, transportation, all the things that we've been talking about. So what we really work to provide is making it easier to connect to resources that exist so that you can find your way around what can sometimes be really complex social systems. So the 350 partners that comprise the Got Your Six network are 350 of those connector organizations that actually represent over 10,000 different organizations. And they could be your Chamber of Commerce, a faith-based organization, like I said, the Department of Veterans Affairs in New York City, United Way, Mission United. So it really does vary, but networking all of those organizations together has been my mission over the past 5-6 years, so that we really can say, when you get out of the military or you are going through a life transition and you are a veteran and you need to get connected to resources where you live, it shouldn't be so hard.
Yep. No, that makes sense. It answered a lot of the questions that I had baked into that next question about the Got Your Six. But one that I do have still is, so I assume they can find obviously the directory on the website, but do you continue to expand beyond the 350 communities? What if a veteran or a service member comes to the website and they plug in their zip code and they don't find such a collaborative in their area? How do they reach out to the Bob Woodruff Foundation and find help where they are if there's not one near them?
Well, we definitely want to know if you are seeing a gap in coverage. I like to emphasize that, we're an organization that is B2B, business to business, not business to consumer. So what I want to be able to direct people to is the organization that in their town is going to provide the resources. We have a team that wakes up every day and is working on providing value to the organizations who are part of the network and also fostering intentional growth of the network. So we want high quality organizations that are bought into the vision of inclusive, sum of the parts kind of vision that is brand agnostic and is cooperative with the VA. So you can definitely let us know if there's a gap and we will be responsive to that. And then if you're an organization that wants to know more and is potentially interested in being a Got Your Six partner, we'll call you on the phone. We'll have a Zoom with you. We want to grow the partnerships and we want to have coverage, meaningful coverage, right? So that every veteran, no matter where they live, has easy access to resources that support them.
That's important. And it's important to hear what you're saying there, that you've vetted these these aren't just but everybody that raises their hand on the website. These are organizations that would be trusted in the eyes of Bob Woodruff Foundation to do right by these families. I know I want to talk about May because we love May around here. May is Military Appreciation Month. Obviously, you are well aware of that. Does the foundation have events that you do specific in May that you'd want to talk about?
Yeah, we've got a lot cracking in May, actually. in Boston on May 9th, this is part of the VOWS initiative I mentioned, we will have over 100 corporations and leaders from 100 different corporations representing their veterans hiring initiatives with a specific emphasis on a more diverse and inclusive workplace. So we're hosting an event in Boston on May 9th. And while I'm in Boston, I am so excited about this. I have the opportunity to go visit two world-class organizations that we support that are based in Boston. One is called Woven, the Women Veterans Network. And for all the female veterans out there that are looking for a little extra peer support, this organization is world-class. They've supported over 2,000 women in Woven groups in person and online. So I'm going to get to meet with some of the people that lead that organization. And then I'm going to stop by Homebase, which is a national nonprofit that's a part of Massachusetts General Hospital. And we're going to meet with them. Their mission is to provide clinical care for veteran service members and families at no cost. It's totally complementary to the VA healthcare system. They have some really groundbreaking clinical work that they're doing. So I'm excited about that. And then in New York on the 11th, I mentioned our partnership with the New York City Department of Veteran Services, and we will be doing a military and veteran family fair focused on improving lives in that for those who are in New York City. So that's May 11th. And I'm just taking a quick tour here around the country. Also in New York, but out on Long Island, we're doing a golf classic before the Monday before Memorial Day weekend. And I like that one because, when you think of Memorial Day, you think of, some people think of the tragic loss of a loved one. And some people think about the beginning of summer and a barbecue and, getting your friends and family together. I think we can do both. And the golf classic is one of those things where you get people together. We're able to raise some money. We're able to refocus on the true meaning of Memorial Day, but in a way that is also hopeful about the way forward. And, who doesn't love a good round of golf? And I'll just mention two more. So there's another cool program that we supported, I think for the first time last year, it might be 2 years. It's called Wear Blue, Run to Remember. And they do, if you're not familiar with this organization, it's a 5K to honor the fallen. And there are specific races that are organized by the Wear Blue, Run to Remember team. So definitely if you feel like putting your thoughts into action, that's something you can get involved in. But what I really like about it is that you can also just wear blue and run a 5K or whatever race in your town. There's, usually towns do that around Memorial Day weekend. So that's one of those things where you could officially be a part of it, unofficially be a part of it. Like for me, I'll run the 5K in my town. It's not an official race member, but I will wear a blue shirt and I will probably put something on Instagram about it.
So was there one more or was that?
Yes, one more.
Yeah, one more.
Rounding out the month on the 29th, so we're going to be at the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans Conference in Washington, D.C.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And this is a big event, but the Bob Woodruff Foundation's specific involvement in this is that we provided scholarships to 18 organizations of our Got Your Six network partners so that they could attend and participate and bring back to their communities what they learned. And that's one of the benefits of being a part of the network. It's not only the opportunity to provide us data, but there's opportunity for scholarships, topical webinars, grants, access to emergency financial assistance, all of those things. So that's another plug for the value of the partnership with the Got Your Six members. And so we just took a tour around the country. Yes, May is a busy one.
We ran a 5K. We went to New York.
With the Boston. It's almost like going on a Major League Baseball tour.
Kind of, yeah.
That NFL Salute to Service initiative, you had some nice press on that. Was it late last year about the $900,000?
Yes. We are, no bigger brand than the NFL. Being partnered with the NFL is something we value deeply. They're incredible partners of ours. We've been partnered for several years. And actually, later this week, I will head out to Detroit we are doing, so the big draft, the NFL draft is on Friday. Yeah. And what we get to do is we're hosting an all-star, wait for it, okay? This is an
I am going to wait for it.
Army Navy wheelchair football championship game. And if you've never heard of wheelchair football, get ready because there is a team coming to you. We are partnered with Move United, which is an incredible organization that brings sports to people with all abilities. And together with the NFL Salute to Service program, we literally invented the Wheelchair Football League. So there are right now 14 teams in 14 NFL markets. Our aspiration is to have a team in every NFL market. And this special game, like we're going to have, folks from the NFL, a ton of people coming out to cheer. I mean, Detroit's like all aflutter about everyone coming to town for the draft. And so there's a ton of energy, but that's an opportunity for us to showcase something where, veterans who have been impacted by their service and may have physical disability can still play competitive sport.
And Amory, we see that like in tennis, we see it in basketball. I mean, other sports have a longer history of that, but this is really the first entree into this type of league.
Yes.
That's awesome.
We're creating history on Militarily Speaking podcast today.
It's going to be the first ever Army Navy, literally that it's all stars from, and it's an all Army team, and then Navy and Marine Corps, shout out Marines, playing each other in this game. So it's like, I can't wait because if you have not witnessed wheelchair football, it is competitive sport, and it is a physical game, and it is like nothing you've ever seen. So I'm excited to see how it goes down. And I'm also just excited to bring veterans into the excitement and the larger American conversation about, a big moment in the NFL calendar where we can draw attention to an important cause.
That's awesome. Could be the next pickleball craze.
Ooh.
How about that? I just gave you an idea, so you run with that one.
You sure did. Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe we'll do that in Nashville. Maybe we should.
So this she keeps talking about it becomes real, So you are very passionate about what your work, about what you do every day. You wake up, and I know you think about how you're going to make a difference in the lives of others and the lives of veteran families. But is there a story or two that you want to share in your long history with Bob Woodruff Foundation that you want to pass on to our listeners that was meaningful for you? I mean, we could be here for another 24 hours talking about all the things he's probably experienced.
Well, what came to mind when you asked me that question is just that I have encountered so many incredible people. And I mean, just even in this conversation, we've talked about people who are top talent in the world, like Bruce Springsteen, to someone who's applying for a grant for fertility assistance because they served in the military and then were impacted by their service and are unable to have a family on their own. And the spectrum of people and experiences is sometimes, I mean, it really is remarkable. And it does make me optimistic and hopeful about what's possible when you build bridges and what's possible when you really are intentional about being inclusive, whether that's the VOWS program and bringing companies into the fold about bringing veterans and military families into their workforces, or it's, sending people from 18 organizations that wouldn't have otherwise had the resources to go to an important conference like the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans in DC. So I would say probably the most profound experience for me has been knowing Bob and Lee Woodruff and their family and understanding the true ethos of why the organization was started and what it continues to stand for, which is to pay it forward, and knowing the authenticity of their gratitude for the military, and then a choice that they made to be a public bridge as civilians to the military community and to dedicate the last, almost 2 decades of their lives and of Bob's recovery with honesty and generosity. So I think when you're in proximity to remarkable people, it's easy to get up with enthusiasm every day.
It is.
Well, I can definitely hear the optimism and the hopefulness in your voice, and our audience can't see your face, but I can see it on your face when you smile, when you're talking about all of this. So we'll just relay that to them now, and they'll have to take our word for it. But as we wind down our conversation, are there things or anything that we haven't thought to ask you about the foundation that you think are important for our audience to know today? If we want to mention, of course, the website again, bobwoodrufffoundation.org with 3 Fs. Yes, there it is. There it is. I'll never say it again now without saying with 3 Fs.
No, now you have to add that to the URL.
I know,
right?
I know.
With 3 Fs.
Because it does look funny when you look at it on paper, but so maybe it's important to say with 3 Fs. Yeah.
Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you both and to have the opportunity to reach your listeners. And for anyone who wants to know more, to support the work of the Bob Woodruff Foundation or to get support from the Bob Woodruff Foundation, we are open for business. We want to hear from you. The site's a great place, like we talked about. Also following the organization on LinkedIn or Instagram, following me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm AMM Dougherty. And I think I mentioned this, but we make annual grants all over the country. There's events that I listed off, and that was just the month of May. So there's tons of ways that we can intersect. And thank you again for giving me the opportunity to spread the message about the work that we're doing.
It's our honor. And yeah, you are a true patriot, though. It's been great getting to know you. Sometimes when we dial for dollars and we get lucky with these 45,000 nonprofits are doing good work out there, and we get people like you, Anne-Marie, to join us. We're humbled, we're honored, and we're thrilled that you were able to tell your story. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Is it time?
It is. It is. It is time for the Military Minute. So we're going to ask you to hang tight. We've taken a good bit of your time today, but
I told her it was 4 hours.
Well, I'm glad you managed expectations, Tom, but hopefully you didn't tell her 4 hours.
Overpromise?
It's called the Military Minute because it probably should happen in under a minute. So this is a little game we like to play at the end of our podcast. We will not put you on the spot, but Tom probably will try to. We had a question last week about the number of military that transitioned to the civilian world and how
Each
many,
year, right?
How many that is on an annual basis. So do you have a guess, Anne-Marie? It's okay if you don't, but
yeah, no, I think it's like 225 to 250,000 a year.
Is that plus or minus the 3%?
Well,
I don't know. I'm not good at math.
We round up or down as needed.
Okay, so with her first answer, we could round down and she could totally win.
She won.
Totally win. Wins the Military Minute. The answer that Tom...
She has to pay for my flight to Nashville.
She has to buy your cowboy boots.
I'll use my points, Tom. I'll use my points.
All right, go ahead.
She's going to put you on a cargo plane. So the answer that Tom put down was 200,000. So if you are in our audience and you answered 200,000 when you saw that question after our last podcast, you need to watch for your name to be posted as the lucky recipient of $50 for yourself and $50 for a charity of your choice.
I.e. Bob Woodruff with 3 Fs Foundation.
Only the website has 3 Fs in a row. So yeah, you don't say that when you're just saying the foundation. Anyway, so this week's Military Minute takes us to a question that references something we've talked about today a couple times. So don't answer this one, Anne-Marie, because we want our audience to play along after we drop this podcast. When did the term "got your six" originate? So if you are listening and you
plus or minus,
and you know the answer, or you can consult Google and find the answer. We didn't say this today, but when did the term "got your six" originate? When this podcast drops, comment your best guess. And if you're right, you too will be entered to win $50 for yourself and $50 for a charity of your choice.
Love it.
Love it.
So fun.
Yes. What?
We do. Thank you. Thank you. Loved it today. You're an awesome individual. And again, a true patriot, back to what I said. And it's been fun spending time with you today. If you enjoyed today's episode, go to afbank.com, subscribe to the show. Make sure to rate us, leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Oh my gosh, likewise.
Copyright Armed Forces Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. All non-Armed Forces Bank owned apps, websites, company names, and product names are trademarks or registered trademarks of their respective owners. Their mention does not imply any affiliation with or endorsement by Armed Forces Bank of them or their products and services. They are merely used as examples of the many available apps, companies, and websites that offer similar services. Before using any app or website, you should carefully review the terms of use, data collection, and privacy policy. Apps may have an initial cost or in-application purchase features. This information is general in nature and is not intended to be legal, tax, or financial advice. Although Armed Forces Bank believes this information to be accurate, it cannot ensure that it could change. Statements or opinions of individuals referenced herein are their own, not Armed Forces Bank. Consult an appropriate professional concerning your specific situation and respective governing bodies for applicable laws, such as IRS.gov for current tax law. Armed Forces Bank, the Armed Forces Bank logo, and the Militarily Speaking logo are registered trademarks of Armed Forces Bank.